Hello everyone, this is Professor Marcel Rominger, and this is Module 2, How to Count Beats and How Dotted Notes Work. Okay, so this is continuing our discussion about rhythm. So let's take a very simple two-measure passage here where we see our meter is 4/4, which means there are 4 beats in every single measure, and I pretty much filled those measures with quarter notes. All right, very simple rhythm, 1 quarter note per beat. So let's tap this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so very simple. But what happens if I take those quarter notes and I turn them into eighth notes? Now we are subdividing the beat with these eighth notes so that we have 2 eighth notes per beat. So what happens? How do I count this? Well, let's put our beats back up again. So here's our beats, and as you can see, I have 4 beats per measure, but there's no way to sort of take into account that second eighth note. How do I count that? As a performer, I want to make sure that I play these notes correctly and evenly. So I have to find a way to count, or I should say a different way to count these beats. So the best way is to add these little plus signs, which I call and. So this kind of fills in the gaps so I can count more accurately. Let's count it now. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I was able to count all the eighth notes, and if I needed to fix an eighth note or discuss an eighth note, I would know which one I was talking about by finding which beat it's on. Beat 1, which is circled right over here, as you can see, is now known as 1 and. I can't call beat 1 just 1, because that is both incomplete and inaccurate. Beat 1 in this context is the first half of the beat, which is 1, and the second half of beat 1, which is and. So beat 1 is 1 and. All right, do you remember this melody from a previous video? So we're going to take this melody, we're going to simplify it a little bit. All right, and as you can see, I changed my 16th notes to eighth notes. All right, so let us take a look at our beats. So because we have eighth notes, I've decided to count this using 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Even if one of these measures did not have eighth notes, you still have to make sure that you count consistently throughout the entire piece or passage that you're working on. So let's count and play this. Let's see what this sounds like. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's hear that again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you can see how all the beats line up with all the notes, and all the eighth notes are accounted for. But what about these last 2 quarter notes? Let's discuss this. Now these are quarter notes, and yet I'm still counting them 3 and 4 and. Why not count them 3, 4? I mean, each one is 1 beat, so why not just count them 3 and 4 rather than 3 and 4 and? Well, the problem comes in performance when I am trying to decipher this rhythm. And when I perform the rhythm, without those ands as place markers, it's very easy to convert those quarter notes into eighth notes, kind of like the eighth notes that come right before them. For example, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. As you can see, I accidentally turned those quarter notes into eighth notes inadvertently by not having and place marker. So like I said before, this is incomplete, it's inaccurate. All right, we need those ands so that we can understand how those quarter notes sound in comparison to the eighth notes. So that's why, as I said before, make sure that you don't have it incomplete and that you count consistently throughout the entire passage. Here it is one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's go back to our original melody. So as you can see, I've switched the eighth notes back to the 16th notes. Now the 16th notes subdivide the beats even further. There are 4 16th notes per beat. So I can't use 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and anymore. That's not going to work with 16th notes. So I need to count this differently. So the way I'm going to count 16th notes are 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now you'll notice that in the first measure there are no 16th notes, but yet remember what I said before, that we want to count this entire passage consistently so that I can realize how the 16th notes pair up with eighth notes, quarter notes, and half notes. So let's listen to this melody now. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Let's hear that again. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So, like I said, by counting in this way, I can hear exactly how fast those 16th notes are supposed to be performed. Also, I can keep, by writing in the beats, I can keep track of which notes land on which beats. So for instance, in the first measure, the last 2 eighth notes I can see line up with 4 and an. And in the second measure, the 16th notes perfectly line up with 2, E, and an So here's our system of rhythm. We have all these different types of notes, and we can see their rhythmic value. So if we have 4 beats, the top row we can see is a whole note. It lasts the whole 4 beats. In the first 3 rows, the counting is pretty much the same. I only need to count 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the last 2 rows, I have to subdivide the beat. So I need to count 1 and 2 and, or 1E and a 2E and a. Regardless, here's beat 1, here's beat 2, here's beat 3, and here's beat 4. Another thing that we see in studying rhythm is that every single note can be subdivided into 2 smaller rhythmic values. So for example, a quarter note can be divided into 2 eighth notes, or a half note can be divided into 2 quarter notes. So then how do dotted notes work? So what is the difference between a note and its dotted counterpart? For example, a quarter note versus a dotted quarter note. Well, like I said before, every note can be divided into 2 smaller rhythmic values. However, when we have a dotted note, what we do is we take half the value and then we add it to that note. So a quarter note is equal to 2 eighth notes, but we take half the value, which is 1 eighth note, we add it to the total value, so a dotted quarter note becomes equal to 3 eighth notes. Same thing with a half note. A half note is equal to 2 quarter notes, but we add half the value, which is 1 quarter note, and it becomes 3 quarter notes are equal to a dotted half note. Alright, so here is the first measure of our music example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first note, that first half note, and I'm going to switch that for a dotted note followed by an eighth note. I've also added in the beats. Because I am using eighth notes, I'm going to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's listen to what this melody sounds like now. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here are the 2 rhythms next to each other. The top measure is the original melody, and the bottom measure is the syncopated melody. So, or using the new dotted rhythm. So the top melody, which uses the half note, it's important to see that the half note has the same rhythmic value as the bottom measure, which has the dotted quarter note followed by the eighth note. Let's listen to them side by side. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the bottom rhythm, which uses the dotted notes, this is a little bit more uneven. So as opposed to the top measure, which is a little bit very, very even, as we saw in previous slides, that one note can be divided evenly into two smaller rhythmic values, whereas that is not the case with the dotted note. So this is known as syncopation. So syncopation is a rhythmic tool that is definitely used in jazz, rock, hip hop, as well as other popular styles. So my question to you is, after listening to these two measures, which one sounds more enticing? Which sounds like a more interesting rhythm? When discerning rhythmic value from notation, it is very important to remember that every single one of these notes can be subdivided into two smaller notes. For example, this whole note that you see in front of you can be subdivided into two smaller notes, which are half notes. Each half note is equal to 2 beats. Then we take the half note, which is equal to 2 beats, and we can subdivide that into two quarter notes. Each quarter note is equal to 1 beat. Then we can take the quarter note and we can subdivide that quarter note into two smaller eighth notes. Each eighth note is equal to half a beat. In this picture, you see single eighth notes as well as two eighth notes barred together. Next, we take that eighth note and we can subdivide that eighth note into two 16th notes. By doing this, we start with a very even and logical system of rhythm. All right, time for our quick check. All right, for this quick check, you're going to need some staff paper and a pencil because I got a rhythm here and I want you to copy it down. So this rhythm is very simple. As you can see, I only have 3 notes. I have a quarter note, a rest, an eighth note rest, an eighth note by itself, and a half note. Okay, so, and I have my time signature, my meter over here. So I want you to copy this rhythm because the question that we're going to be asking that I want you to quickly figure out is, what beat is this note on? So you're going to have to sort of figure out how to write in the beats, maybe do a little detective work. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video, copy this, pause the video, and when you have the answer, unpause. Okay, did you come up with the answer? All right, so in order to come up with the answer, I hope that you, on your staff paper and your pencil, you copied the rhythm as I wrote it. The next thing you have to do is you have to write in the beats. So if I go ahead and write in the beats for this measure, you'll notice that I had to use 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and because I have eighth notes and eighth note rest. So I have to count in this way consistently throughout the entire measure. It's all the same. All right, so it would be like this for the next measure as well. And then once I lined all the beats up with the correct notes and their note values, then I realized that this note is on the and of 2, or 2 and. Did you get the correct answer? If not, go back, study the video, take a look at how I wrote it, pause the video, take a look at this, and try again, and you'll get it. All right? Thanks so much.